Hello and welcome. The fourth set of budget makers is now with us. Dr. TV Somanathan, Finance Secretary, and Tuhin Kanta Pandey, the Secretary of DIPAM, as it is now called. Welcome. Both of you have had many long days and even longer one today, but as we try and digest many of the questions and clarity that is emerging from the budget and its fine print, Dr. Somanathan, I start with you, and I'm trying to take many of the questions that economists and other stakeholders have asked. For example, one of the questions that is being asked is that the budget has the budget pressed a pause button after 2 years of double-digit allocations for infrastructure and capex? Has that pause button been pressed? How would you answer that, sir?
So I would answer it by saying that you cannot press a pause button when when you're talking about the same year. So we are talking about 24-25. We announced a figure of 11.11111 lakh crores, which I think we may have discussed on February 1st.
Absolutely.
We are still in the same year. And we've retained the figure of 11.11111 lakh crores. So I don't say what pause we have had.
And pressing that large amount pause is in any case difficult.
We are not even talking about the next year. You will see next year whether there's an increase and what it is. But let me tell you that this year's figure of 11,111 crores is 17% above the actuals of last year, which was 9,48,000 crores. So it is a 17% increase. It is a large increase. Still, it's not as large as the percentage of the previous year, but this is a large increase in and of itself.
One quick follow-up, 50% or thereabouts is railways, for example.
Correct.
The second element is the absorptive capacity.
No, 50% is not railway. Railway plus highways is about 50%.
Railway plus highways, thank you for that. Do you think, given the remaining months of the fiscal and the first 3 months where for obvious reasons, will all of this get absorbed and utilized?
My honest answer is I'm not sure that the whole amount would necessarily be utilized, but I think we'll see a substantial utilization. Whether it will be the full 11, I don't know, but I think it will be close to it.
One more point, along with capex, which has been the dominant theme in the past 2-3 years post-COVID, and the post-COVID immediate responses, some of them have sunset. If from the budget today, job creation has come forefront. What is the government seeking to achieve from the three sort of key measures that have been outlined?
See, we are seeking to address we have multiple obstacles in job creation. One is there is a skilling deficit. We all know that. We need people, industry wants people with skills. We don't yet have enough skilled people, and our skilling and educational systems need improvements. So let's be realistic. We have the education and skilling system that we have today. We can't wait for its improvement in the long run. It will improve. We have a new education policy, things are happening, but it won't happen tomorrow. Industry does need people. In fact, several industries have told us they have shortages of people that they want to recruit. Absolutely. So on the one hand, you have unemployment. On the other hand, you have people who want jobs. So we are seeking to bridge this with a very carefully calibrated set of policy actions. We have two interventions. The first scheme of 1 month's salary is primarily geared at overcoming the resistance to hiring a first-timer. See, employers typically like somebody with experience. Anybody getting the first job is the most difficult because you have no experience. And every employer says, how much experience do you have? So what we are saying is, if you're taking somebody with no experience, we will subsidize. And we will pay for 1 month's wage. So this helps you to take a less productive person and put him through the learning curve without the employer necessarily having to worry about that. So this is expected to incentivize more hiring of first timers relative to hiring repeat employees who worked before. So we want to give a push to those who are finding it difficult to break through into the employment market.
Quick interjection, which sectors are likely to be amenable to this policy push?
See, first of all, any person who's recruited for the first time into any sector of the economy is eligible in the first scheme. We have chosen to be totally non-selective. Every sector is eligible. Then we have a second scheme which is more selective. That is for manufacturing. There the subsidy is much higher, but the threshold that industry needs to meet is also higher.
But why did we need a separate one for manufacturing, considering you are already giving substantial support via PLI, sir?
But PLI is only for certain sectors. There's a constant demand that I don't have PLI in this sector, I don't have PLI in that sector. We cannot replicate PLIs in every
But
part
is
of
there
industry.
duplication for those sectors where PLI is available?
It's okay, we don't mind. If they're creating more jobs, they get more here.
Okay.
PLIs are not geared to jobs, they're geared to output. A highly mechanized plant will get PLI. But if you want to get this, you have to employ more people. So
Fair point.
if they start mechanizing less and taking more labor, say in the packing of the product. See, another thing is, there is always opportunity at the margin for substitution of capital and labor. It's not that a high-tech industry will suddenly start using people to do its work. But even a high-tech industry has certain things that can either be done through workers or done through robots. Now, that marginal decision is affected by incentives. This is what industry tells us, this is what economists tell us. And so we are creating incentives for additional use of labor in place of something else by giving fiscal incentives. And the second scheme on manufacturing, why in manufacturing? Because manufacturing tends to have more specific skilling needs. And if the skilling ecosystem is not present, what we are trying to say is, we will pay 72% of one person year's salary as subsidy to you over 4 years. Since we are giving you a large subsidy, it pays for you to even skill the person. I mean, you go out and skill them, but take first timers. If it means having to skill them, please do it, we are subsidizing you. I mean, it's a choice we are giving. It's an incentive that we are giving, but we are putting a lot of money on the table.
I almost see shades of Agnipath, but in a different way. In the civil workforce,
I don't think
trained 4 years,
there
skilled
is
people.
no comparison. There is no comparison. I don't think that's an apt comparison at all here.
I will take that point further with you. But Mr. Panda, has the pause button, because I asked him about pause button on CAPEX, has the pause button been pressed as far as disinvestment is concerned, sir?
No, it's not so. I think it's a change of strategy and looking at the time horizon, of whatever you do, value realization. I mean, after all, what is disinvestment? Disinvestment is like you shed your shares for good. Now, your shares also earn you income, like anything. You would like to really take a retirement, or you would like to continue to be in India today and take salary? You take a retirement package.
True.
So the question is that you will continue to create value, and that value is then derived. I mean, government can derive dividends in that form of some of the dividend, and also the other shareholders, and also the capex and the participation in growth. And you have different disinvestment continuum. When you start listing a company, actually you are disinvesting, but you are not, this thing controlled. So point is that from listing to privatization, these are different shades of disinvestments. And then every time when you list a company, you do it with a wider public ownership.
Mr. Panda, what about asset monetization? A few years ago, that was the National Asset Monetization Plan, and I know it was being driven separately within the government structure, but broadly speaking, is there scope for the government to sort of monetize many of the assets that it has invested in and grown?
I think some of this is going on. It's like, asset recycling is going on. For example, if you really look at the InvITs that the toll roads which are being done, and so that is being pulled in, and now we have what is called a miscellaneous capital receipts, where we are intending to have about 50,000 crore. CPSC dividend alone is about 56,000 crore. Put together is 1.06 lakh crore we are targeting this year. I mean, I'm not counting the dividend from the banks and financial institutions. Most of the banks are also giving dividend now. Financial institutions, insurance companies are giving dividend as well. The total non-tax revenue is very substantial. It's 5.45 lakh crore, which is up from about 4 lakh crores, which is provisional actuals. A rise of about 1.45 lakh crore within this year. So point is that you are putting together in the whole this thing, disinvestment, calibrated disinvestment strategy is also a part of it, but it is not the sole purpose for which the CPSC policy is being framed.
Okay. Finance Secretary, may I ask you to explain the rationale behind the substantial allocation? I was trying to see the numbers on Awas Yojana, for example. It's obviously you are looking at downstream sectors also benefiting. Can you expand on that?
So, see, there are a number of schemes here for rural infrastructure, but the two biggest which are directly rural are the Awas Yojana and the Gram Sadak Yojana.
Yes.
Gram Sadak Yojana is actually core infrastructure. It's just rural infrastructure. It is roads between one village and another. And it has all the benefits that any other form of infrastructure expenditure has in terms of multiplier effect, job creation, creating activity in the villages. So it's a very potent device, and it benefits some of the most disadvantaged parts of the country. So that's one. The Awas Yojana also has a good multiplier effect. It's very labor intensive. People basically being assisted to build their own homes largely, not only that. And both of these have good spin-off effects in terms of rural economic demand, consumption, etc. So they are, I think, win-win, both in terms of the beneficiary being benefited and the larger economy also getting a boost.
Some of the major social sector heads on which there are commitments, Manrega and others, there have been some increases almost after 2 years of largely being flat, if my reading is correct.
Correct.
What drove that decision?
Manrega is a demand-driven scheme. So there was a huge surge in demand during COVID. And I must say that demand in Manrega is partly genuine and partly bogus. I mean, we have enough studies to show that some of the demand is not necessarily, and there's a box item in the economic survey which somebody may like to read. So, but nevertheless, it is a demand-driven scheme. During COVID, there was an obvious surge in demand because a lot of people needed it. Post-COVID, what was the right level at which estimation should be done? We were not clear what would be the steady demand in a post-COVID environment. So we were provisioning something and then topping it up each year. Now we are clear that with revised wages, this is the base level that we need. So we have upped it to 86,000 crores.
Comment about the agriculture focus in the budget, because that's also a key pillar that emerged.
Yes.
Expand on that. What's driving?
Two things. One is there is a reference to agricultural research. It's a very serious reference. We will have a fresh look at how agricultural research is done, how much of it is done in government institutions, how much can be done through private sector research, how do we provide funds to both, because yes, we need, I think there are no two opinions on whether we need to invest in agricultural research. But the question is, we have a set of old processes, institutions and programs. If they had been successful, we would not be talking about it. The fact that we are talking about revamping agricultural research needs some revamping. So how do we revamp it? This committee will look at it, and after that, funding will be provided in such a way that we get the best result. We want agriculture research to produce practical benefits in areas where we need success. We need improved productivity in pulses. We need improved productivity in oil seeds. We need better, varieties that are resistant to climate change. So these are the kinds of things where agriculture research now has to reprioritize. Not necessarily the traditional, increasing wheat yields or increasing sugarcane yields. These are not the priorities now. But yet we have to reorient. So there's a whole paragraph on that, and that's a very serious paragraph. So this is, I would say, one of the most important parts. The other is there are new varieties that have been developed. Deploying those varieties through state governments and extension services is also a priority.
Absolutely. Mr. Panda, I turn to you to a broader question, and this is first 5 years from 2014, big reforms. 2019 onwards, management of COVID and in fact that big corporate tax rate cut. Very broadly speaking, if a layman were to ask you, how would you describe the roadmap that seems to have been enunciated for the next 5 years, how would you describe or caption it?
I think there is I think if you say these are basically a factor reforms, if you really see, if you can sum up, the different kinds of, the indications are also have been given. Because there is, like for example, ease of doing business. It cuts across various sectors and doing it. Things about land, where, the FAR, how you are doing urban planning. Because, you have to generate growth impulses at different places. And employment is a very big theme in this budget. And rightly so, because you have to anchor the whole thing in terms of employment, and every time when you do the factor reforms, what you are really saying is you have to keep in mind two things. One is that employing our human resources, which includes skilling and education and so on, health, and the second thing is also raising productivity wherever we can due to our inefficient processes by streamlining our inefficient processes. And I think enough of the indications have been given, although the detailing of those reforms will be rolled out as we go along.
One of them also, Finance Secretary, is to do with FDI, that the rules will be simplified further to facilitate inflows. Is it possible for you to give us some more color on that?
I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to give you a very authoritative answer on that. My colleague, Mr. Ajay Seth, would be in a better position.
We will definitely do that. As we get to the end of this conversation, tell us about the thought that went into the kind of fiscal consolidation roadmap that you have stuck to. The markets have taken that in good stride. We have spent years trying to win back macroeconomic credibility that reflected in what S&P did. Was that the biggest sort of driving force behind this part being written?
I want to make one thing very clear. We have no expectations of the credit rating agencies. We do not believe that they are fair. I do not believe, I should not speak on behalf of the government. I do not believe that they are fair.
Okay.
I believe that they have double standards, that we have much lower deficits than countries which are rated much higher than us. We have greater growth rates than them. So that never seems to count for. So I'm not looking at anything from the rating agencies. But as a government, I think the government is also not doing these things because the rating agencies would like it, or it's good for the country. This country needs to be fiscally prudent, because if you're not fiscally prudent, an increasing share of your revenues will be eaten up by interest payments. And many states are in this position today, where most of what they earn goes off in paying interest. They have very little money to do anything else. If India is to be a Viksit Bharat, we need to invest. We need to invest in the right things. We need resources. And if we borrow too much, you will have a galloping interest burden, which will eat up everything that you raise. So it is our own interest, it is the government's interest, the people's interest to keep fiscal prudence, and that is the motivation for our fiscal prudence.
And absolutely, the government of the day obviously represents the people of this country. Finance Secretary and Mr. Pandey, thank you very much for your time, because the key message really is the focus on jobs and employment through the interventions that have been announced, and we'll closely track the results that they generate. Thank you very much for your time with us today. With that, it's a wrap. We'll be back with more. Until then, goodbye.